What's going on, Herd? Welcome to the channel. Thanks for tuning into the video. Today's going to be touching on one of them, touching on a touchy subject. Let's just leave it at that, huh? So I had been considering doing this video for probably 3 months now, maybe 4 months. It's been a long time, and thinking about how do you go about this, because the wheel situation in GTA 5 Online across the spectrum is such a touchy subject. There's so many people in the drift community and the race community, just the motorsports community in general, that believe that, for example, muscle is different than sport, and sport is different than high-end, and high-end is different than from the street that we got here just recently. And then on the other side, there is just as many, if not more people that say, hey, look at the coding of the game, look at this channel, look at that channel. They all say that there's no difference, so hey, there's no difference. So I had to tread lightly here and figure out how am I going to go about doing this video. I did tackle this subject in the Drift Myth series. This was a while back, probably 2-3 years ago, and I wasn't ever really able to offer any conclusive evidence. The speed boost length was the same. It didn't seem to really be any different, but I still was a believer that, hey, there seems to be a slight little difference. So in today's video, we need to first off dig in deep. Is there really a difference in wheels in GTA 5 Online? And guys, I put about 3 days of recording and crunching numbers and recording times into this dang experiment. So buckle up. If you guys enjoy this video, leave a thumbs up below. Let me know what you think in the comment section. So first off, I knew I was going to create something special, an exact creation that I was going to be able to somewhat showcase if there is a difference in traction or if there's a difference in the bump management. Is there a difference at all versus just having stock wheels on your vehicle and then putting on off-road tires? Nothing else different. So I built this little grip test area, and on the side I put a little platform that'll allow me to take off from the exact same area and head up between the same two flags, which will then force me to take the same path up the mountain every single time. I chose to start with the Futo since I knew it was a slipperier vehicle and it has a long spin out in the beginning. Then I found a portion on the map where if I hold down the trigger and never let off the trigger, it never shifts up into second gears. Is there any difference in traction? So we take the stock Futo up the mountain 10 different times, and the very first lap pretty good, 19.83 seconds. Not too bad. In the middle of all these numbers as you're looking at right now, the fastest time was 19.57 seconds. The slowest time was 21.74 seconds, and it gave the stock Futo an average time of 20.614 seconds. And this was not the only test I did, so I'm not going to sit here and show you all 20 runs at this dang mountain here. We're going to move on to the next thing. For the Futo with the off-road wheels, the fastest lap it laid down was 19.69, so very, very close to the stock Futo, which was 19.57. And then the slowest lap for the off-road Futo was 21.82. Again, very close to the 21.74 in the stock Futo. Here's where it gets even more interesting. The top to bottom difference for the off-road Futo, 2.13 seconds, so hundredths of a second difference. So what does this prove? Not a lot, and that's what I knew right away. This wasn't enough for me, it's not going to be enough for you. Let's dig in with another vehicle. So I brought the Faction out. So I took it right to the same testing grounds that we put together, and I realized, well, we're not going to make it up the mountain with rain. So I had to go turn the rain off. We even had to take off different with the Factions, but the Faction did allow us to shift. So now it's going to prove our traction a little bit different. With a little extra speed that the Faction's offering up the mountain, with a little bit of bumps that we have in the beginning, is it making it any quicker? The fastest time the stock Faction laid down was a 9.96. Not bad at all. The slowest was an 11.45. It gave an average time of 10.505 seconds for the stock Faction. Off-road version, so again, stock vehicle completely, but with off-road wheels. Fastest time, 9.71 seconds. Slowest time, 11.35 seconds. So again, very, very close. We're talking tenths of a second off here. 1/10, 2/10 of a second. With the Faction, the off-road version was slightly quicker, with an average of 10.47 seconds versus the 10.505. Again, hundredths of a second here. Now again, in racing, hundredths are hundredths, but the off-road version of the Faction, hundredths of a second quicker. The off-road Faction of the Futo, hundredths of a second quicker. Now, is this enough for me? Is this conclusive evidence that, hey, the off-roads are going to give you a slight advantage? No, it really just isn't. It's way too close. It's way, way too close. And I would say, I mean, this is running 10. I would say if you ran 100, you would get numbers that are even closer. Essentially, in a nutshell, there's just as much evidence after doing these two tests that there is no effect as there is that there is an effect. So I could not prove at all that traction had a difference. I brought it in, I just did some normal speed boosting, did some drifting, slid it around. you know, you get that mental thought that maybe it's not engaging the speed boost right, but then you start thinking, why would that be the case over wheels? Why wouldn't it engage the speed boost the same? And it was really only a couple times I seemed to notice it. So really, is this just a placebo effect is what it comes down to. We got an achievement for thinking this way. Placebo effect being that, you know, you start to believe something's making a difference and it's really not making a difference. Now, placebo effect goes into place with superstition as well. You'll see, like, for example, in supercross racing, each one of the big guys have some little thing that they do every single race when they take off from the starting gates. One will raise his hand, his left hand, and point up to the sky. One will, you know, pull down his helmet a little bit. One of them will shake his head. Like, they all have the same thing. They do the same exact thing every race. Does that really have anything to do with the race? No, it has a placebo effect. It's superstition. But I wasn't willing to just quit there, right? I couldn't prove that there was a traction difference. So unfortunately for us drifters out there, we're still in myth land. We don't really know. You can believe one way and you can believe another, and there's tiny bits of evidence out there for both sides. I'd honestly say there's more physical evidence that there is no difference in the wheel type. However, there are a couple small examples out there that would persuade people to believe the other way. And then there's a lot of prominent people in the drift community that all believe that way. There's people in the race community, which we're going to sum our video up here with talking about the race community. I couldn't prove that there was a difference in traction, right? But is there a difference in the way that the off-road tires handle the bumps, like the racing community claim there is? Well, there was only one way to find out, and that was to add a new section to our grip test area, and let's head over there. So I took the Futo out this time, and I figured let's just test the Futo and go from there. Again, same exact layout with the Futos, 100% bone stock, and then the same thing, bone stock with off-road wheels. The fastest time the stock Futo laid down on this little run here was 20.18 seconds, and the slowest was a 21.02. I did have a little swerve with that 21.02 time, though. That brought us to an average of 20.523 seconds, so basically 20.5 seconds. The fastest time with the off-road wheels was actually the very first run out there, 19.83 seconds, and I actually timed this one twice, just to make sure I got it right. And 19.83, and it surprised me, because then I started thinking, well, this is going to be the proof. That's substantially quicker. We didn't lay down 1:19 with the stock. Well, that was the only 19 we laid down with the off-road, oddly enough. The slowest time we laid down was a 20.99, also had a little bit of swerve, almost in the exact same area as the last one, so it made these tests very, very similar here. Again, slowest time is off by like hundredths of a second, thousandths of a second here. Our fastest time, 20.1 versus 19.8. I mean, that's tenths of a second, which that's pretty good. Our average for the off-road was 20.435 seconds. So 20.52 with the stock versus 20.43 with the off-road. That's almost a full 1/10 of a second. So that's about all I had, and I can sit here and do these same tests over and over and over and spend days and days and days proving it. But after 3 days of testing and building and trying to figure out a way to really prove visually on a video that there's a difference. We managed to prove about a year and a half ago that the unstanceable vehicles, the vehicles that don't drop the new handling line, they still can be stanced. They can't be dropped. But if you shoot the suspension, there is a difference in the handling line. You can tell. And we did prove it. We had a way of visually proving it. Now, it wasn't a lot, but it was enough for me to say 100% conclusive. There is definitely a difference once you shoot the vehicle. With this study here, I mean, hundredths of a second. And if hundredths of a second are enough for you, then yes, this study should be enough. We ran 3 separate tests, 2 separate vehicles, 60 runs tested. Every single time it was hundredths of a second difference, and every single time the off-road were that hundredths of a second quicker. So that's what this study showed. Is it enough for me personally? You know, it's still not the proof that I want to have. I'm still a believer that there's a slight difference. I seem to notice it in the drifting more than anything. I don't even notice it when you're off-road or when you're doing it with the racing and whatnot. I don't notice it at all, but I don't do it enough. I've been drifting this game now for almost a half a decade, and I'm not alone. Many people out there that are far more in-depth in this thing than I am have found that bumpers seem to make a difference. The stacking theory, where if you put too many parts on your car, it changes the handling line. The neons, the tire smoke. These theories that really can't be physically shown on a video are almost endless in the drift community. They are very, very in-depth. I sit kind of in the middle with a lot of these things. It's kind of like in real world, I just keep an open mind to both sides and try to come out with my best perspective of the thing. Again, if you're a racer out there and hundredths of a second are enough for you, then I think that this video probably shows you enough evidence to stick with the belief. Or if you don't believe it, then look into it a little bit more at least. But as a drifter, I just don't know if the evidence will ever be shown in this late in the game, and still really no one being able to definitely show a difference. I mean, there are a couple videos out there on YouTube, but there's the one where the guy's doing the same kind of technique that I did going up the mountain, and he only tested it a few times. We tested 60 runs. We went 40 times up the mountain just in general. And honestly, I think the more times you run, the closer those times are going to get. I think those hundredths of a second will turn into thousandths of a second. And honestly, I think if you keep running it back, you would probably find a time or two that the stock version actually beats the off-road. Then once that happens, who knows where we go from there, guys. So to answer the original question, are street tires or street wheels good for drifting? Yeah, they're very good. I don't see any difference between these and SUV. They might be somewhere between sports and SUV. When it really comes down to it, they're the best looking wheels in the game. And why would you not use them when there's, if any difference at all, extremely minuscule. With that said, guys, if you enjoyed this video and the drift content in general, make sure to leave a like below. Subscribe to the channel if you're not subscribed yet. And, of course, as always, guys, hope you all stay happy out there. Please stay positive, and we will definitely speak to you next time.